So let's see. I believe this should be live now, is it? I really have never done a stream before. Wait a second, I'm gonna close the door. That's probably a good idea. So yeah. Well, if you guys can actually hear me or see anything, then welcome to the very first live stream. I just figured I'm gonna try it out. Oh, Rebal, hello there. Can you hear anything? Can you see anything? Because at the moment, I still see that I'm offline here on YouTube. I just figured I'm gonna try out a live stream today. Oh, you can see and hear. Alright, so you can see this Lightroom picture right here, I guess. And, well, there's probably gonna be a delay of about like 10 or 15 seconds, but if that's all and everything else is working, then that would be amazing. So let's see again. Oh god, so many people here. Hello everybody. Greetings from Greece. Hello to Greece. I cannot read your name, but welcome everybody. Hello, hello. John Pablo Dentone, welcome there. Hello from the UK. Well, hello everybody. So this is awesome. I just figured out I'm gonna try to stream, and an hour ago I just was watching tutorials on how to do it, and it seems to work. Hello from Brazil, and all working super well. Hello there, Vander Sulu. Hope you're doing well. Man, this is crazy. 47 live viewers? I've just turned on the stream like a minute ago. Alright, so let's try this. Alright, I'm not gonna be able to say hello to everybody because unfortunately I just have one monitor, so I'm gonna have to either look at the chat or just be here in Lightroom. But what I figured I'm gonna do here is just kinda take some pictures and edit them. You know, I went to Scotland actually for a few weeks, and I got some pictures. I just selected a few. I got a lot more. I think I shot a total of like 5,000. But these are pretty much gonna be some of the photos I just kinda selected. And, you know, if you guys look at these, just tell me which one would you like me to edit first. So this one is on the Isle of Skye. I pretty think this could be pretty cool after some editing. This may be less so, you know. Then this is an HDR sequence, so this might also be pretty cool. And I like this picture a lot. This is from the Kerrang. There's another one, maybe not so interesting, and the last picture I selected. So just let me know which picture of these you would like to see me edit while I look at the chat here. Hello from Belgium. Hello, Sunny Bloom. Good to see you. Any home. Hello from to Poland there. So the cloudy one, please. The HDR, so we can see how you combine the HDR. Again, I'm very sorry if I cannot really respond to the chat, because I can only be either in Lightroom or in the chat here, because otherwise I would need two monitors and I don't have that right now. HDR, please edit the HDR. So everybody seems to want the HDR. The highway with car, the last one. Sunny light, please edit HDR. Alright, so I think the HDR one, you guys also liked this one, right? Like this one right here. But maybe I'm gonna do that afterwards. So first the thing, alright, so let's get started here. Now, the thing is, if I shoot an HDR, I always try to shoot very bright first of all, so I have a lot of shadow detail, and then afterwards I just decrease a stop in exposure. So as you can see, maybe on the top right are the settings: ISO 100, 39mm, f8, 1/25th of a second, and then if I go to the next frame, everything's the same except for the shutter speed. So sorry about that. Usually I would cut stuff like this out, but this is a live stream. But yeah, just the shutter speed is now 1/50th of a second, then in the next picture it's 1/100th of a second, and in the very last one, 1/200th of a second. And I usually do that so I can just, you know, have all of the shadow detail at first, of course, and then gradually go lower and lower until I have really all of the cloud and bright detail. As you can see in the histogram with this last shot, we really have plenty of that in all of the highlight parts. So after I've done, you know, the HDR of course and imported it into Lightroom, what I just do is go to any picture really and go down to the lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, and that is so all of these lines, I mean, I'm sure you guys already know what it is about, but I just want to click on it. Then also enable profile corrections and just choose your lens. This is very important if you're shooting an HDR sequence, because then you have a kind of a more, just a better HDR picture at the end. It's not as important as with a panorama, but I would still do that. So after you've done all of that, you can just actually shift click to your last picture. So everything is selected, if you can see that down here, and then just synchronize. And you would really only have to synchronize these two settings, but you can also just check all, because these are the only two settings you've done. So after I'm done with that, let me take another look at the chat, see if everything is fine here. So the chat seems to be stopped. You guys are offline. Are you offline? No, come on. Ha. Wait a second. No. Oh man. Are you guys there? Because here on my dashboard it says offline. You guys are here. Alright, that's good. I thought I was talking to myself for the last 5 minutes. Alright, okay. So I'm just gonna have to switch back and forth from time to time, but it seems that everything is fine. So, alright, so now I synchronized all of the settings here, you know, just the lens corrections and the chromatic aberration, and I've got my 4 pictures down here. Then, of course, you want to select them, or already have them selected, then right-click Photo Merge HDR. And HDR is actually very easy in Lightroom. You just have to wait a little bit. You know, that's another thing that I would just skip forward on a video, but here you guys have to sit with me. So this is the auto align, is a thing that you absolutely want to have, so any of the small shake will still be compensated for, so you don't have an unsharp picture at the end. Auto tone, I would just turn that off. Deghosting amount is if you have something moving in your picture, then you can kind of counteract that, but it does kind of a weird job sometimes, so I would just leave that at none. So I'm just gonna merge here, and even though the preview just looks way over brightened, we can always adjust that later on. And the great thing about an HDR is not that you have a great look, you know, after stitching it together. It's that you have a much bigger dynamic range with all of the highlight details, all of the shadow details. And let me see here, is this it? Yes, this is the HDR picture right now. So this is just what we've got after stitching them together. And maybe I should just get rid of that down here so you have a bigger preview. So let me just see another second here at the oh, you guys can see the settings. I see. That's really bad. So it must be that my screen recorder isn't picking up any external windows from Lightroom. I promise next stream is going to be much better, but anyways, so you guys kind of know what I did, and I'm sure you know how it looks if you've stitched together an HDR before. So this is just kind of the picture I've gotten right now after stitching it together. And again, we have all of the brightness details, even if it doesn't seem like it. If I go down here in the highlights or down in the exposure, you can see we have these clouds really nicely, nothing clipped, nothing looking ugly. And of course, we have plenty of shadow detail as well. So the next thing should be just editing the picture, of course. And the great thing about Lightroom, or just stitching together your picture, your HDR in Lightroom, is that you still have a DNG or RAW file, so you don't have to work with a TIFF, so it's really the best possible quality that you can get. So, alright, so first of all, I definitely want to bring down some of the exposure here, because again, this is an HDR file, just how it came out right after stitching together. and it is definitely a bit too bright. That being said though, I do want some of these darker parts, especially the shadows, to be a little bit bright. You know, nothing crazy, it still should be a little bit moody, but, you know, just a little bit brighter. Then, as you guys know, I always like to bring down the highlight slider here, and now we already have kind of a relatively neutral and boring picture, which is actually what I want at the moment, because that allows me to bring up the whites a lot more. And by the way, I have the highlight warning turned on, so any of the red parts means that there's something clipped. And a thing that you can actually do, or what I would suggest you to do, is just to go up with the whites quite a lot. So yeah, around 70 should be fine, much more is not needed. But then if the foreground becomes also a little bit too bright, you can just adjust the exposure accordingly. And if it's really just the sky that is too bright, you can grab a graduated filter, go into the minus exposure, and that already looks pretty good. So let me take another second to check out the live chat here, because I don't know, like it says that I'm offline here, but you guys say that I'm online, and you guys also write in the chat, so that should be fine, I hope. Yeah, so the chat is stuck once again. Actually, I got an idea, so let me get my phone and just open the chat right here, since I don't have a second monitor. Alright, so let me search for myself on YouTube. Again, this is very unprofessional, but hope you guys understand, and hopefully the next stream will be much better. Yeah, okay, live chat. Oh, wonderful. Here it's actually working on my phone, and now I can permanently be in Lightroom here. You're online, you're fine. That's great. Alright, so now let's just take another look at from before to after. So the only difference is really just the overall, you know, how the exposure looks. It's a little bit more punchy already, but it's definitely mostly about equivalating out the sky and kind of getting the basics right. So after all of these adjustments here, what I usually like to do is actually, you know, there are two options. One is to go up with the blacks and to go up with the contrast as well, to get some contrast in there. And by bringing up the blacks, you don't make it, you know, too dark, too contrasty. So that's a nice way to go. The other way would kind of go into the minus contrast and actually go down with the blacks. So it's not that different of a look, but it just kind of changes how you adjust the dark parts. Personally, I think I'm gonna go into the plus blacks here though, and just a little bit into the plus contrast as well. Andrew Staffer asks, what version am I using? I'm just using the latest Adobe CC Lightroom version. I honestly have no clue what it is, but it probably is like Lightroom 6 point something. You will find it on Adobe's website, I'm sure. Alright, so after all of these 4 or 5 basic adjustment sliders, this is really where I start, where I do my very basics. After all of that, I like to go into the color temperature, and the thing with this picture is I actually didn't match the color temperature according to the lighting at the scene. So it is a little bit too cold how it is right now, and it probably looked more something like this. And yeah, I think something like that should look pretty good, because I'm not going for a documenting look, I'm just kind of going for an artistic look. So that looks pretty good. Then a tint is usually a thing that I just use if there is a bit of a too much greenish cast or too much of a magenta-ish cast. It's great also for sunset pictures to just add a little bit of magenta in there, but here, yeah, maybe actually a bit of magenta, but not too much. So then let's see with the clarity. I hope you guys enjoy this stream. It's actually kind of crazy that 90 people are watching for the first stream ever without any announcement at all. So let's go into the clarity here. And usually I bring up the clarity, although I always say that you should also try to minus clarity, but because there is so much texture that I actually want to show to bring out, as you can see, the difference from minus clarity to how pronounced all of that texture is with plus clarity, I think that looks pretty good here. Yeah, actually around 50 clarity. So Reball is asking what monitor do I use. I'm actually just editing on my laptop at the moment, which is a Asus ZenBook UX501VW, I believe. It has a pretty cool screen, actually a 4K screen, but I'm just using it at 1080p right now. I'm just gonna give you kind of a close-up view of some of this while I read some of the questions here. Oh, is that true? Your subscribers receive an email as soon as you go online. Isn't that only if you type, manually the bell thing that you want notifications? Well, I don't know. You can edit photos taken with phone. Yeah, I actually took some photos in Scotland with my phone, and I'm probably gonna make a video about that sometime. So, yeah. It seems that you guys got a notice. That's pretty cool of YouTube, actually. So let's continue with the editing though, and vibrance and saturation, the next two sliders. Now vibrance will just bring up the colors that aren't as prominent, whereas saturation will just kind of bring up everything. Usually speaking, I like vibrance more than the saturation, but you also kind of have to play around with it, with both sliders together to really get the best result, because every single picture is very, very different. So yeah, I don't really want to go overboard here, so I'm just gonna go with around 30 vibrance and about 5 saturation. And if I quickly show you from before to after, I mean, what do you guys think? Because I get so many comments that I over-edit pictures, and I totally understand that in a way, but my personal style is to edit pictures relatively heavily. So just let me know, seeing this before and after, is this too much? Is this not enough? Or what do you guys think so far? It looks amazing already? Well, I'm glad you think that. And you adjust, when I adjust the clarity, do I need to readjust whites and blacks? Not really. Sometimes if you bring up the clarity really by a lot, if I show that right here, it can make some of the bright parts even brighter, some of the dark parts even darker, because what clarity is pretty much is a very, very fine texture contrast. So you can sometimes make stuff a little bit over bright, but usually speaking, unless you really go 100 into the plus clarity, you shouldn't be super worried about it, and whites and blacks shouldn't have to be adjusted after that. Yeah, you have the same problem, Ivan 20R. Yeah, that sometimes happens if you just start editing and don't really look, and all of a sudden it's a bit too far. Very similar to the look I like. So far it's okay. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna continue from here. And after all of the basics adjustments, I mean, this is really where most of the most important things are already done, kind of beyond the basics already, just the overall look, the colors, the brightness, because if I would go for a very dark exposure, I would do it here. So everything else after that is really about the fine-tuning and getting the color exactly right, and of course creating interest, differentiation, and I'm sure, what is the other word I always use? Oh, complexification. How could I forget that? So going into the total curve though, I'm just gonna play around with the sliders. It's really hard to say what you should do here. It is so different from picture to picture. So actually a thing that I think is gonna work, yeah, is bringing down the shadows a little bit, because the shadows are just the very dark parts in the tonal curve. So you can really have a relatively actually washed out picture almost, but then if you go down into the tonal curve and add some shadows there, it can actually make it look alright, and you can kind of get away with a washed out look, because you don't even notice it, because it is so prominent because it just adjusts the very dark parts. I really love that slider. The same is actually true with the highlight parts. With the highlight slider here, it really just adjusts the very, very bright parts. So you can use that for additional dynamic, but I would be careful here. So what about dehaze? Asks MixoPop. Well, dehaze is something I honestly don't use very much at all because, I mean, you can actually use it as an artistic thing. It's very similar to kind of clarity, but different. So you can use that as an artistic choice. But personally, for, actually reducing haze, I don't do that very much, because if I already have haze in the picture, I tend to work with it and, incorporate it in the whole picture for additional mood rather than just to remove it. But if you want to remove haze, then I'm sure the slider could be useful here. So, and Andrew Staffer is asking, what camera lens combination did you use and where was it shot? So I used a Canon 600D with an 18-55 kit lens, my old camera and lens combo. It's very cheap, it's old, it's not great, but if I zoom in 1:1 here without any detail adjustments done so far, I mean, there's plenty of detail. If you use the gear right, then you can get pretty cool pictures that are plenty for online sharing, plenty for smaller prints, for website use and stock photography, whatever. There are certainly limitations to that lens and to the whole ISO performance, but if you use it in broad daylight on a tripod, then you're gonna have quite a lot of detail actually. So, oh yeah, the next question was, where did I shot it? This is actually the Kirrung on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. It's written with a Q at the start, but it's a very famous landmark, and it's absolutely beautiful there. I can highly recommend you to check it out if you happen to go there at any time. Then, yeah, let's continue with the editing though. Now, after all of the tonal curve and basics adjustments, I'm just gonna quickly show the before and after. It's definitely way closer to what I envisioned and what I want, but there's much more fine adjusting to be done. Now, with the HSL tool, you could fine adjust all of the hues, all of the colors really very in depth, but I usually don't do that because it's such a small adjustment and it takes a lot of time. So it's all up to you. If you want to change it, you can of course, but I'm just gonna leave it out here. The next thing is split toning though, and I love split toning. If you've watched any of my videos, I'm sure you know how much I love it. And this is also a thing, if I click on this little box right here, you guys can probably not see the color palette because the settings are messed up. But yeah, what you can pretty much do here, in case you don't know anything about the split toning, is choose your hue. So you could go into the orange tones, into the green tones, into the blue tones, and you can add a different amount of saturation of that. The cool thing about this is that it adds more color in the highlight parts rather than in the shadows. So you can get a lot of differentiation from that, and you can also make it kind of look more artistic and also more natural if you want to. But, usually I like to go into the warm tones at least a little bit, but because this is already so warm, I think I might actually play around with the blues. Now, let me see, with a little bit of saturation, it doesn't really work, so let's go into the red tones, because I think this landscape might work with the reds here. But really not much saturation at all, around 8 should really do the job. And let me take a look at another look at the chat here. Stunning location, I went there last month, definitely well worth the visit. Buchin, 1977. Yeah, I absolutely love the Kerrang, probably one of my favorite spots in all of Scotland that I visited. And we can see changes in split toning. I mean, you can see the changes, right? But you cannot see the color palette if I open it here, I don't think. And any other questions? What lens did I use? Yeah, just the Canon 18-55 kit lens with the Canon 600D. Going into the shadows though, I think I'm actually gonna add some blues here for the shadows, and that is again, now, okay, so just look at the picture, it looks very warm. I like the look that it is warm, but I just want a little bit of difference in there. So I'm going to the blues and bring up some of the saturation, and look at that, we already have a much more interesting picture, at least if you ask me. But again, you don't want to just overdo it. You want to do it very subtly and just do it kind of like that. And I hope, can you guys? Yeah, I think I'm still live. Again, this is my first live stream ever, so if anything is not perfect, then I apologize for that. And just let me know in the chat so I can fix it for the next time. Now, detail, another thing. I'm not gonna worry too much about the detail stuff because it's rather boring to watch, I think. It's more like technical and less actual of a difference that you guys can see. So I'm just gonna real quick add around 50 sharpening, bring the masking slider to the right so only the parts that I actually want to be sharpened are sharpened. And then I'm also gonna bring up the noise reduction slider. So the noise reduction slider, or the color noise reduction, sorry, if I zoom in here and I reduce the color noise reduction to default, if you're watching this in full HD, you might be able to see the difference as there is quite a lot of sensor noise, so green and purple dots all over the picture, and as I bring the slider up to 100, it will start to look much cleaner. And this is especially true in the shadow areas, or if you have a very high ISO and already a lot of noise, then this can really help a lot. And the great thing about the color noise reduction compared to the noise reduction is that it actually doesn't have any bad impact, so it doesn't take away any sharpness as the noise reduction tool would. So let me take another look at the chat here. Very good job. Thank you very much, Mixup. Phil D, how long are you on for? Well, I'm actually not sure. I just decided to randomly stream. I'm probably still on for another half an hour, if not longer. But yeah, I don't have a real schedule as of right now. Okay, so yeah, where I was is the detail tool. Again, don't want to go too much in detail. Got that? Don't want to go too much in depth there because it's rather boring and more kind of technical stuff. So let's go down, skip the transform tool. This is a thing that I use all the time for cityscapes where there are houses and lines, but in landscapes you really don't have to worry about it. So let's get on. Effects. You guys know that I love vignetting here, and you know what? This is actually kind of tough. I really think there is opportunity for a ton of vignetting. So first of all, of course, I'm gonna adjust the midpoint, and the thing is, a kind of trick that I actually have is to bring down the amount to -100, so it looks absolutely dark and terrible. But that is so I can see where the midpoint actually is and how much of the vignetting I have in the picture. So, for example, if you would have something very important, you know, towards the right here, you have something very important to the left, something very important up here, then you would want to make sure that you don't go over that with your actual vignetting and bring the midpoint, you know, too close to the center. But because here, I just kind of want to have a little bit of attention on the mountains here, this peak right here, as well as these two lakes. So it's not a huge deal if there is a little bit, you know, of that lake cut off with the vignetting. But if you have something very important towards the corners, then you of course want to keep that in mind as you move around the midpoint slider. Now, looking at the chat again, hi Yuri asks, 123 Brummer. Okay. Do you make your living from photography, or is this a hobby for you? Your work is excellent and your channel is where I come to learn Lightroom. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy the channel and the videos. Now, I don't make my full living off of photography, because at the moment I'm really just trying to work my way into it to eventually get there. But you know, YouTube alone doesn't really pay that well. If you don't know, if you guys watch my videos, then you know, every few thousand clicks I get some money. Well, it's actually different than that. You pretty much, if you watch ads in front of the videos, you get like a few pennies, not even that. And you know, with thousands of views, of course, that kind of can make a decent chunk, but at the moment I'm nowhere near the size that I would have to be to actually, you know, make a living from YouTube. And photography itself is, yeah, it's not there either, but I'm certainly working towards it, and I have a ton of fun, you know, doing photography, making videos, and a little bit money on the side is already pretty cool if you ask me. Yeah, it's all about the clicks. It's true, it is all about the clicks because it's, yeah, it's the more views you get on YouTube, the more money you make. There's a lot of variables, of course, but that's pretty much the basic metric. Then another question from Corrupt Scorpion. That's a cool name, actually. Kind of a clever one. So for street photography, I would highly recommend getting into mirrorless systems. Well, it depends. It's all up to you, really, because some people really prefer mirrorless for pretty much everything, because you can have the preview, you have it light and small, and other people really like the DSLR because it has a large battery, long battery life, and generally speaking better focus, at least in the past. So I wouldn't really say that mirrorless is better for street photography, nor is it worse. It's really both DSLRs and mirrorless have their own ups and downs, and it's completely up to, yeah, it's completely up to you which one you actually prefer. So then Ivan 2R asks, views, of course. It was a short 20-second. All I got from it was $4, lol. Well, I wish, you know, if you would watch a 20-second ad and I would get $4, I would be rich by now, but it's actually nowhere near that. It's really much less, but I do make, you know, some money on the side, which is cool nevertheless. Anyways, let's go into the editing real quick again before I read the chat, and to the vignetting. So what I said is that I really like to bring that down the amount by a lot, bring the midpoint, you know, also down usually, but making sure I don't cut off anything important. And then I also like to go into the feather to really feather it out, have a very soft graduation from the vignetting to the rest of the picture, and then after all of that go into the actual amount and just fine tune it here. It's actually kind of difficult. I do really believe that there is actually opportunity for like, yeah, for like 35 into the minus vignetting, but perhaps I should keep it at a more reasonable, like, minus 20 level. What do you guys think? Do you like minus 20 better? Or really a heavy vignetting here that adds a lot of dramaticness to the picture? Jones Lima? I'm really terrible at names, so sorry about that. But he says, since I got to know your channel, I have admired all of your works. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And I'm glad if you can learn something. You know, that's really awesome to see comments with people that say I could really have an impact on their editing and what they used. So that's always cool to hear. You guys think 20, 25 to 30, 20 to 25? Yeah, maybe I'm just gonna keep it kind of at 25, I guess. Not, yeah, not kind of too crazy, but also still quite dramatic. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And from before any vignetting, I mean, it really looks almost painfully boring compared to afterwards. Vignetting can have such a huge impact. In some pictures it's not a big deal, but in this photo right here I really believe that it is much cooler with the vignetting. Going down to the camera calibration actually. Now, this is a thing that I actually used to adjust a lot in the past, but nowadays, I mean, it's really all about the color and the whole, fine-tuning of the color. And at the end, I just didn't figure it was worth the time because you move around the sliders, you're not really sure, is this really better? Is it just a little bit different? It's so small, so minor that I actually leave it at quite a lot of the times. But especially if you're new to Lightroom, I can absolutely recommend you to check it out and, play around with it. Yeah, now after, this is actually really weird because usually in my videos I really try to keep a flow going and just constantly talk, and if I kind of mess up I just edit it out and talk again. But here on a live stream I don't have that, and I guess I kind of have to get used to making pauses. Huh. Okay. So DBDB says, thanks for the stream, Sally, I have to go, love it, keep it up. Well, thank you very much for stopping by, and this stream will probably be actually on YouTube after it finishes, I believe. So you can go back and watch it a later time. That's the cool thing about YouTube live streaming. Then please do more live chats in the future, these are great. Yeah, I will try to do more live streams in general because I really enjoy them. I can just sit down, record, talk with you guys, and don't have to worry about all of the editing and the boring stuff of it, and can really also, ask you for what you guys would edit or if you would do something differently. So I think that's actually pretty cool. I'm definitely gonna make more of these in the future. Even 20R, people hit the like button to help get exposure. You don't have to do it. I always ask at the end of the videos for you guys to either like or dislike. It really helps me to see which kinds of videos you guys enjoy, which you don't. But it also helps to kind of rank the videos higher on YouTube actually, if there's a video with a ton of likes. So, you don't have to do it, and certainly if you did not enjoy something, then leaving a dislike actually helps me much more to see that you didn't enjoy the videos, so I can actually change something. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of the global adjustments, but now, of course, I'm going to go into the local adjustments as well, and do some dodge and burning, graduated filter, and if you want to see the difference from before to after. Now, the thing is, who here, honestly, just say it honestly, who thinks this is over-edited? Just asking, not judging you, just really curious at the moment. Andrew Stuffer says, thanks for taking the time, a great tutorial. Well, I appreciate you being here, just trying out live streaming for the first time. And yeah, I think it's going pretty well so far. Thank you very much for that. Can we see a before and after of this now? There you go. It's not over edited, you don't think? BT tenant? Tenant, or how do you say that? Not over edited. Victor says, nope, looks great. What's the longest you've spent on an edit? Do you give yourself a time limit or just take as long as it takes? This is actually a great question. So I usually, if I, just edit for like stock photography, I really don't want to spend too much time on an image because I cannot afford to spend like an hour editing a photo that's gonna give me a few cents at the end. But if I really want to, have a great picture, I really know that it could be, potentially popular or, worth a lot, I guess, sometime in the future, then I do spend a lot of time editing the photo, and I don't really set myself a time limit. I certainly got a lot faster editing over the past years, of course, as with everything, you kind of get more used to every adjustment, and you can just look at a picture and already know half of the sliders, what you gotta do with them. So yeah, to be short, if I have a picture that I want to post on 500px on my website, on Instagram, then I do not set myself a time limit really. But if it's just like stock photography, then I do try to not spend too much. It's much better after the purists are missing the point and or don't understand the point of Lightroom, says Andrew. Well, I can certainly, respect that people think that even though they might want to edit a picture, they kind of want to keep it more natural and less artistic. But at the same time, I just think, it's up to everybody themselves, right? It's not like I hurt anyone by editing it too much, but obviously if you guys all say it's way too much, then I have to change something, because why would you even watch if I would just edit, something like this? Maybe this is actually an idea for a 1st of April video, just doing like a super serious tutorial and raising all of the sliders by 100. Okay, I'm not editing like that. I still like to keep it at least somewhat close to the original, if you can call that at all. And Andrew asks again, was this shot in RAW? Yes, I shoot pretty much all of my pictures in RAW. I don't know when is the last time I shot a JPEG picture. That was actually probably before I got Lightroom. But yeah, I always shoot RAW. Gives you so much flexibility in post and much better quality at the end. Really, you should shoot RAW, everybody, because it's much better than JPEG. JPEG is maybe a little bit smaller, but honestly, with hard drives being so cheap, you're much better off just shooting RAW and having all of the flexibility and all of the possibility in post. Mixo Pop says, I would only change the orange toning. I like the greenish, it looks natural. Ah, I see what you're saying. So if you compare it from before to after, you know what? This is actually a really, really good point, because I haven't even thought about that, but I do give full credit to you for that. I'm gonna go into the HSL tool real quick, go into the into the hue, and actually go to the green tones and just try to make them a little bit more greenish rather than yellowish meshed together. Then also go into the greens with the saturation, just bring that up a little bit, and go into the luminance. And I'm not sure if I want to do anything here, but now I think luminance I'm just gonna reset and keep at 0. But if I show real quick from before any HSL tool adjustments to after, yeah, that is definitely much better. I like that, overall everything, all of the colors work together, but it was a little bit more too much together, and afterwards I like this a lot better. So thank you very much for this tip. This is actually amazing, There are so many small things that I oftentimes just forget, and you guys can just point them out. So this is awesome to have, in a live stream. But yeah, again, so it's the before to after. Does anybody have any other suggestions of what I should do to this picture before I go into the local adjustments for the dodge and burning and lighting and so on? Like anything about the color or contrast or something? Dirty Wave on the track says you are developing an HDR file, so if you compare the before and after, a dramatic change should be expected. No, I don't agree with that actually, because I personally just use HDR as a way to get more dynamic range. That's really the only purpose that I have for HDRs. Personally, I don't like the very super overdone, like, what is it? It would be like super high shadow, super high clarity and contrast, and like the super HDR-ish look. I personally don't like that. I really just look at HDRs or do HDRs for additional shadow and highlight detail. And Jones asks, in the meantime, do you use third-party plugins in addition to Lightroom? No, I actually don't. I tried out Silver Effects, which is from Nix Software, which was acquired by Google and is now free. Now, a lot of people actually really like that Nix software programs, but personally, I just tried it out and figured there was not much to it in addition to Lightroom, so I just never used it since. And the only other, well, I tried out, what's it called, Panoramics? Or Photomatics, maybe both. I believe it's Photomatics because in the old versions of Lightroom you couldn't stitch together HDRs, and I didn't have Photoshop back then. But now that you can stitch together HDRs and panoramas, I'm really not using anything else. The only thing that I use is Photoshop nowadays, so that's a great thing about Adobe also, is that you can just right click on a picture in Lightroom and then edit in Adobe Photoshop. But I'm not doing too much in Photoshop, to be honest, mostly adding sharpening, or maybe, if it's an advanced effect that I can't do in Lightroom. But other than that, I'm really doing like 99% of the things in Lightroom itself. So going to the actual suggestions for the picture, the clouds in the upper right corner are a little bit yellow and green. Yep, I agree with you there. Now, I'm gonna change that in the local adjustments though, even though I kinda like the differentiation from, just for differentiation's sake, from the right being different than the left, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit too greenish there. And Ivan 20R, I think 20R. Honestly, editing in Livestream seems awesome. Know that you need help, but I can see how it will help you perfect your skills. Yeah, I do think so, and also I think it's just cool that it's more interactive. If you guys have any questions, I might be able to catch your question in the chat and give an answer right away rather than, waiting on a comment and then I'm not really sure what exactly you meant because I've, made the video a week ago, so it's much cooler if I'm honest. Then Andrew says again, the mountain in the background is lit by the sun from the clouds, maybe some selective burning to enhance. Yeah. So the sun is definitely, well, where is the sun actually? I think it was somewhere towards the right, even though you cannot really see it super well, but I'm gonna try to enhance and give, some additional depth to that entire picture by making some sides darker, some sides brighter in the dodge and burning afterwards. And Ribal says, sorry, I have to go. Keep up the great work. I watched the replay. Yeah, thank you very much for stopping by. You can always watch the replay. It will be on YouTube, and that's also the cool thing about YouTube live streaming, that you can just, head out and watch it at a later time. Great edit, but please bump a color. I don't know. I think it is pretty cool how it is right now, I really don't want to overdo that. I still want to have the kind of original characteristic. But yeah, I believe that is pretty much all the feedback I got here for the editing right now. Maybe I've skipped some questions. I'm sorry if I did, but yeah, just ask it again and I might catch it. But anyways, I'm going to go into the local adjustments here, and I really think there is a lot of opportunity for that. So let me just check out the picture itself. Look, these are actually sheep, if you can see them in the live stream. So there's so much going on in this picture, all of these shapes and textures. I have to say I'm pretty much very happy with this picture. But yeah, going into the graduated filters. Now, the graduated filters, what I like to use them for is just for kind of more broad local adjustments. So for example, the sky, I actually already added a graduated filter at the very start of the whole edit, just to reduce the exposure from very bright to much better. But what I actually want to do now is add some additional contrast, or at least just make the clouds a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more cloudy, dark, stormish. So I think, okay, a thing that I can actually do is bring up the shadows while still bringing down the blacks, bringing up the contrast, so at least the very dark parts aren't too, too contrasty, too dark. And maybe I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of clarity as well. So let's see, from before any of these adjustments, I really like to go back into the history and seeing how it looks from before to after. I do believe I'm kind of on the right track. Now, some of the colors are too bad after all of these adjustments, but I'm gonna fix that. But just the overall more pronounced clouds, more harsh clouds, I actually like that look pretty well. Yeah, I think I'm gonna overall just turn down some of that saturation for the sky. I don't want to make it black and white, of course, but yeah, just like minus 25 should work much better compared to 0 here. It just looked a bit overdone after, all of the contrast and blacks editing. So, let me think. What is the next graduated filter I should do? Yeah, I really think I need to add a lot of complexity here, because let's be honest here. So the main attractions is towards the right of the frame. So the lake, another lake, the mountain, this cool mountain, and on the left, the bottom left, it's really, there are some shapes, there are some textures, but overall it's mostly dead space. So I don't mind if that's a little bit darker than the rest. And so I'm just gonna grab a graduated filter here, go into the minus exposure, and I really want to have a very soft edge for that. But this, additionally to having less attention on the bottom left, it will also add overall complexity. It also happens to work really well with the overall lighting scheme. So just getting a bit more into the minus exposure. I love to just use multiple filters for that, for multiple levels of minus exposure. It gives you a lot of control. And if you've seen any of my videos again, then you will know that I always like to also add another filter in parallel, just with a little bit of plus exposure. And I think, yeah, just a bit of plus whites, although I really have to be careful not to clip any of the clouds. But just something like that, like a third of a stop, and then, about 7 or 8 in the whites over the right side, and I believe I have to make it even softer. So this should look, yeah, I honestly think this looks already so much cooler. Just to give you a quick comparison, so from before any graduated filters, it's rather flat. And afterwards, it's already much more interesting, if you ask me, not to mention the sky being much better. But let me take another second to look at the chat real quick. So, Tarlia McKay says, there needs to be more separation on the left between your mountain range and the clouds. The clouds, not the clouds. It doesn't look natural from the right side of the back mountain and the right mountain. So, the back side of the right. So you mean this one right here, so that is almost kind of like a glow behind there. Yeah, this is almost, as long as it is not too much, I actually kind of like it, because it adds almost like a glow. And, I know that if you go too far into editing, it can really look terrible. But at the moment, it is not at the level where I really mind it. But if you would want to adjust something like that, you would probably have to go into the adjustment brush, just grab some very loose minus exposure, mix with some minus clarity, and then, go into press down the Alt key to get a minus adjustment brush and just kind of brush away all of the minus exposure on the actual rock. And that seems already a little bit better, although it is, it is quite difficult to get fully rid of. Sveigot666 says, hello from Florida. I love your videos. Thanks for the help. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the videos. Thank you very much for joining the live stream. And who else is giving any advice? Arthur van Jashin says the overall shadow slider is still at plus 100 from the HDR example a couple of minutes ago. What exactly do you mean with that? No, oh, I see what you said. This is a thing that I completely forgot about. But yeah, I do think it is maybe a little bit too much. Thank you very much for reminding me. You know, these are some of the small things that you just sometimes forget about and go on, but it is very helpful to have you guys kind of looking over the whole edit as well. Okay. Then, yeah, is there any other questions? Yeah, 123 Brummer says again, who is your inspiration slash favorite photographer? Well, there are a lot of amazing photographers which photos I love to look at, which give me a huge amount of inspiration, but if I would have to pick some of my top photographers, I would probably say Mark Adamus. I think his pictures are amazing. Then also Joe Cornish makes very different style than what I do, but still amazing. Then Anthony Spencer, amazing photographer, absolutely love his work, and he makes such high quality pictures. He doesn't go around and shoot everything, just very selective, very minimalistic a lot of times, but beautiful. Then, you know, there are so many. Honestly, there are a lot of photographers just on like 500px whose name I don't even know. I just follow them, I look at their work. But yeah, I'd say like Mark Adamus, Joe Cornish, Anthony Spencer, even to a certain extent Peter Lick, because he's very good at what he does, even though I believe that he doesn't have the most amazing pictures compared to a lot of the other pro photographers. He is certainly very specialized, and he knows what he's doing, other than me, who doesn't know what I'm saying. But yeah, these are probably my favorite ones. Of course, I had it a second ago. Oh, of course, Ansel Adams, a huge inspiration as well, especially with his black and white work. But yeah, these are probably my favorite ones. Now, going on to the editing, because this must probably be kind of boring. Well, actually, it might actually also be interesting for those who watch afterwards. I mean, just leave a comment if you're watching afterwards, or leave a chat message if you're live here. But yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further with the graduated filter. Now, I think the next thing what I'm gonna do is just change the overall look of the right side of the clouds, because somebody has mentioned earlier that the right side is kind of greenish, warmish, whereas the left side is much more bluish. Now, personally, I like that it is more warm, but I do have to go a bit into the plus tint here, and perhaps go a bit into the minus saturation, while bringing up at least, well, you know what, let's actually go into the color here and add a bit of warmth, if not even yellows. I'm really just trying to find a color that works, because I need a different color than blue for some of the differentiation. And yeah, like just kind of a yellowish orangey mix, and then really just adding a hint, you know, like 7, and perhaps even going further into the plus tint here, a little bit of contrast as well, or actually maybe even lack of contrast, is the right side is the bright side, and bringing up the shadows. I do believe that it should actually work pretty well, and that way the right side is still rather different to the left, but less kind of aggressively so, less greenish. So here's from before that one filter, here's after. Maybe just a little bit more fine tuning at the end, a little bit less into the saturation, and also a bit less into the tint. But yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Now, the great thing about this new version of Lightroom, I believe it's in there, it's been in there for a couple of months, but that is that you can just go into the brush, and if I hold down or press down the O key here, then you can see the reds, which means all of the red parts are actually affected by this graduated filter. And now with the brush, I can just hold down the Alt key and get rid of any of the foreground. So it's really only the adjustment in the sky. I absolutely love this technique, this tool that they've added. It really makes it much easier to work with the graduated filters. So now what I'm gonna do is actually, I believe what I'm gonna do is first of all just add a very small graduated filter over the very top of the sky. You can just hold down your shift key as you actually make your graduated filter, and look at that, you have it perfectly straight. So just hold down the shift key for that, and also go a bit into the minus exposure plus contrast, I believe. So the top really closes out the picture and almost acts as a kind of additional part of the vignetting, and a bit into the minus blacks here as well. Now, I'm gonna add another filter before I read the chat again. Sorry if it's kind of, as if I'm ignoring you. I'm really not. I try to get the best of both worlds of reading the chat, answering questions, and also editing the picture. But I'm just gonna add another graduated filter over the left this time and go again into the color and just see what I want to do here, because yeah, I think like a light blue would work much better than a kind of darkish one. So let's go in here and add really a hint of saturation, nothing crazy, and then angling the filter correctly. Now at this point it's really all about the broad complexification, and I'm gonna go into the local adjustments such as the rail filters and the adjustment brush later on to really fine adjust all of the colors in a very small scale. But overall, I think I'm actually pretty happy. Perhaps I'm even gonna add another graduated filter, this time less over the top, kind of sided, but more over just the right part, and go even more into the plus exposure and a bit more into the plus whites as well. So that way I can have an even bigger differentiation of the exposure from left to right. And yeah, this seems to work actually pretty good. So just to show right now from before any graduated filters to after, it certainly changes a lot, and I like how it gives much more attention on the actual mountains and the lakes. As I said at the beginning of the graduated filter adjustments, it is really, I think it is much better, but certainly with the dodge and burning, it will look even better at the end. So, reading the chat again. Meanwhile, you can just let me know what you guys think of this edit. Is it overdone? Is there anything else you would do it to the graduated filters, perhaps, to the lighting differentiation, or anything like that? So, Carol Cresswell says, prefer the sky when not quite so dark, as it makes the bright lake stand out too much. I see what you're saying, but what I would do here in such a case is actually still keep the overall sky dark, and then perhaps go and grab a, kind of what's it called, a rail filter, and go into the plus whites as well as the plus exposure with just one part there. And that way you can kind of, make certain spots brighter without having the entire sky very flat and boring. So I'm just gonna see that afterwards if I want to do any of that. But yeah, right now it certainly, the lakes stand out quite a lot, but I'm not sure if it's too much for my taste. Then Hoda Owly says, amazing, where is this place? Well, this is the Kerrang on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. It's written with a Q, Coirang. It's actually written, but it's an amazing place. It's one of the most famous landmarks of the Isle of Skye. You can just Google it if you want to learn more about it. And AW Zone asks, how do you think about the little bit magenta in this picture? I actually personally really love the magenta, because if you look at the bottom right here, you can see it's rather greenish, and I like the green. This is, by the way, a cemetery. Now, usually I don't, love having them in my pictures on purpose, or, too large part of my picture. But since this is such an additional element, and just in the bottom, it actually adds so much, complexity if you just look at it closely. And then as you go to the left, it becomes a little bit more magenta-ish. And personally, I think this looks pretty cool. Was this? Nope. I think I thought saw something, but I didn't. So let's go on here. Are you on Flickr? I am on Flickr, but I haven't uploaded a month there. I really just use 500px, and I try to use Instagram more at the moment. Then BT10 Ant, is that your name? Then he says, upper left hand seeks a little bit dark, especially if you're going to add a vignette. Yeah, perhaps it's a little bit dark, so let me actually go back to this filter that I've added mainly for the color differentiation, and perhaps just at least add a little bit of plus shadows and, a bit of plus exposure. I still like that the left is darker than the right, but I think you were right in terms of it being a little bit overdone. Then let's see the before and after one more time. Sure, go ahead here. So this left, of course, is the before. And Victor is asking, where did you place your focus on the picture? Well, the thing is, I shot this at 39mm, and it's so far away that it doesn't matter so much where exactly you focus, whether it be in the foreground or, kind of in the middle. It doesn't matter so much, but usually, just generally speaking, I like to just focus somewhere on the bottom third line. So if I open, here, just somewhere on this line down here works usually pretty well with the focusing. There are also apps for your phone where you can calculate the focus, but personally, I mean, once you shot a couple of thousand pictures, you kind of know where to focus in a scene, how far stuff is away, what aperture you're on, in order to get everything in focus. But yeah, just the bottom third line should work pretty well most of the time. Then, Cassie Keller asks, how did you show the before and after for just the last graduated filter you did? Oh, the thing is, as far as I know, Lightroom doesn't have an option for that, so what I just do is, if I want to show in a video what I did to a graduated filter in particular, is I just delete it, and then afterwards I hit the short for returning, what's it called again? The short for undoing that adjustment. So I just Control C and it will undo the deletion of the filter. So that's just how I do it. It's very fast because, again, Lightroom doesn't have an option as far as I know for that. So yeah, I think I'm pretty much caught up with the chat, at least down here. It might be possible that if I edit something and you typed a couple of minutes ago, I overseen that. So just type your message again and hopefully I'll catch it. But I think I'm gonna continue here because I couldn't really find anything in the chat what to do other than the cloud darkness on the left, which was a pretty good suggestion. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm gonna go to the dodge and burning now. So, dodge and burning. Now, do you guys have any questions in terms of dodge and burning, to the what is it, or how do you do the basics, or do you already know from my hundreds of times talking about it in a video, and you would just kind of like to learn more of the details and where to place it exactly and why I place it there? I'm happy to answer any of the questions you guys have. I'm gonna just wait for a second because there is a delay on the stream, about like 15 or 20 seconds, I believe. But pretty much the basics of dodge and burning is just bringing up the whites, bringing up the exposure. Also, what you can do is add a little bit of contrast. I found that to work pretty good a lot of the times. And certainly you could play around with everything else as well. You could even add some worms in addition to everything else. So you have kind of an additional differentiation rather than just exposure. Also a little bit of the color. But you have to be kind of careful if you do that because it's very easy to go too far. So Ivan20R asks again, what aperture do you use for your landscape photos? Well, it really depends. Usually I like to go at around f8 because it's a very sharp aperture, there's not much diffraction. It has a pretty decent amount of stuff that is sharp in the picture. So I really like f8, but you know, if the light is low, I will sometimes drop that if I want to have like a starburst or I have a very close object and I want to have, you know, everything sharp in the picture from very close to distant, then I might go to f11 or f16 sometimes. Then Diego Guestes asks something in Spanish. Unfortunately, I don't understand Spanish. I wish I did, but I'm sorry that I can't answer your question. Anyways, there seems to be no specific questions for dodge and burning as far as I can see here on the chat. Let me just make sure that it's not just, you know, the chat messing up, but it's actually the entire... Yeah, okay, so you guys just don't have any particular questions about dodge and burning, which is fine. So yeah, I showed you the basics, and now what I'm pretty much gonna do is just add filters over the entire picture. And the very important thing about this is that you add it according to the lighting scheme. So for example here, I could really add a lot of plus exposure with some whites over the right because there is already, you know, it's already bright there, it's where the light is hitting. But if I were just duplicate it and go over some of the dark shadows and just add too much of it, you guys can see it looks terrible and it just doesn't work with the entire lighting scheme. So with the dodge and burning, even though you can go over neutral areas and enhance them, it's very important that you don't go over very dark areas and make them brighter. You don't go over bright areas and make them super bright, because even if you enjoy very heavy edited pictures, you still want to keep them at least sort of natural looking, sort of go with the lighting scheme, because it's all about, you know, enhancing what is already there rather than creating something completely new. So what I'm doing for that is just right click and duplicating the filters, and I can drag them over different parts of the picture. As you go over different parts, you might have to adjust some of the settings, the contrast, not go quite as far into the plus whites. And again, just going with all of the exposure here, with the contrast, sorry, as well. And with the whites a little bit into the minus because it's not as needed over here. And I'm just gonna right click and duplicate. I really am a big fan of multiple layers of this dodge and burning, so I'm going over here as well. And yeah, I think that should actually work pretty well in terms of the plus exposure. Let me just see real quick from before any dodge and burning to afterwards. So I think this is a pretty good example. It shows you that you have a bit more of an interesting picture in terms of the bright parts as of right now, but it is still, you know, kind of close to how it was before. So you really don't want to go overboard with it. Again, just use it to enhance, not to completely change around your picture. Now in the chat, let's see here. Pedro Miguel Diniz Vincente, what a name, says, and it's in Portuguese, not Spanish. I'm sorry about that. I thought he said Spanish, but Yeah, okay. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't realize that it was actually Portuguese. Then Henry Beaker says, how or where do you market your landscape pictures? Well, the main thing that I do is just upload the pictures to 500px, Instagram, Facebook, and so on, and hope that people will kind of notice them that way. Of course, I always show them off, while editing in my YouTube channel. Kind of have to in order to edit a picture. And I also do some stock photography, but yeah, I'm not really, pitching towards clients at the moment, but you could certainly do that as well. Then, for your next live presentation, would you consider processing a black and white image? Thanks. Yeah, I will certainly consider that. I mean, if you go to this photo right here, I think this should look pretty cool in black and white as well. Yeah, a bit boring if you ask me. Sorry for the squeaking chair, by the way, but it does have some nice shadows and differentiation, but I think the color is a very major part for this photo. But I will certainly consider doing it for the next live stream or video. Then, yeah, I think that's pretty much all of questions that you guys have at the moment. So let's go on here again and go into the dodge and burning even more. So again, I showed you from before any dodge and burning to after. Perhaps this one is a little bit too big actually. You can hold down the Alt key and just drag an individual side of a filter and make that one smaller actually, which is pretty cool. And now I really think I have to add some minus exposure, because even though the plus exposure might be the exciting part and where you can really make stuff shine, quite literally, in the minus exposure, sorry, it is really important as well, because that way you create differentiation. So for example, I will just add a filter with some minus exposure, and yeah, perhaps a little bit of minus blacks as well, but mainly minus exposure over the left side here, because this isn't hit directly by the light, so I can really enhance the shadows there. The same thing is actually true with this area right here, kind of to a lesser extent, because actually, yeah, to a lesser extent, I thought my live stream was, what's it called? Was broken for a second, but it still works. But yeah, I'm just adding a little bit of minus exposure over here, so there's a difference from this part, which is relatively bright. Let's load Lightroom. Lightroom is also always very slow if I zoom in and have dodge and burning stuff going on. But you can kind of see the right part is relatively bright, the left part is relatively bright. So just by having some minus exposure part in the middle, it actually divides it, it adds additional complexity, dynamic, and interest. So you have to do all of that in a very careful way, because especially with minus exposure, it is super easy to just make something completely over dark. So always be very careful. And it might be a bit difficult at first if you just start out with dodge and burning, but once you really get a sense of the overall exposure, the overall how dodge and burning works, you will be able to make your pictures look so much better than without any dodge and burning. For example, I just want to have some minus exposure down here, not necessarily on the lake, just in between the dark rocks and the bright green parts. So there's the green parts stand out even more. Then right click and duplicating over here again, and I really think towards the right it is important to at least have some of these cliffs in shadow. I apologize if I kind of start to stutter a little bit. Usually I like to record for around an hour or 1.5 hours, and after that I have to take a break because I just suck at speaking for long times, to be honest. But you kind of get the idea, and I think we're pretty soon done with this picture. I actually didn't think I would just, edit one picture on this live stream. I just thought I would do more kind of shorter edits on multiple photos, but hey, perhaps that's kind of a thing for the future, for future live streams. And You know, I would actually be pretty interested if you guys could tell me if you enjoy like these very in-depth, very long videos or live streams more, or if you really like the fast 5 or 10-minute edits where I perhaps not go so much in detail, but rather have, you know, kind of more exciting editing done about really just the very big adjustments rather than going so long about, you know, the small kind of stuff as well. But in any case, I believe that looks pretty good to me. So let's take a look at before any darkroom burning, and here is after. And if you thought it might have been a bit over the top before any of the minus exposure adjustments, then I hope you think this is better now, because certainly I think it is just a bit more flat before, but afterwards it really pops out in a very non-intrusive way, and I absolutely love the minus exposure for making me able to go into the plus exposure so much with the bright parts. So again, minus exposure is really also very important additionally to just the plus exposure. But with that being said, let's actually take a kind of closer look. I hope you guys can see that if I go into full screen here. Perhaps you can't. I will see it in a second on the preview. Meanwhile, I'm just checking out the chat again. Okay. So you say, I prefer you take your time on the live streams, longer is better. I understand that, yeah, certainly more in detail, possibility to show. Then Joe says either is great. Well, I appreciate that. I will certainly kind of do a mix probably as I do with my videos, you know, do longer videos, but then again also do some quick edits. And I think the live streams are great for long videos, but your normal video, 10 videos are just a good time, 10-minute videos. Yeah, okay, I understand that maybe live stream is a little bit more interesting since you guys can chat, you know, ask questions, and in normal videos it gets boring after like 20, 30, 40 minutes of just hearing one guy talk non-pause. I can certainly understand that. No, you guys can actually not see the what's it called again? You guys cannot see the full screen. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is just zoom into the picture, not by a lot, just like 1 to 2, and get rid of this adjustment bar to the right. So just looking at the picture once you think that you're done in a close way while being zoomed in at least a little bit can really work so well, because you might see some detail, some sensor spots that you just didn't realize before. So it is always great to kind of go over the entire picture. Now I'm aware that this might look almost washed out, like this area right here, but I actually think it looks pretty cool and I like it. So yeah, there is a little bit more opportunity for darkroom burning there. And yeah, another thing for the sky, even though I think I'm gonna keep the overall exposure relatively even for the sky, and also the color, I'm not gonna change anything there. I just think I want to add a bright spot, because as you suggested previously, the lakes take away a lot of the attention, and I don't really want to make the lakes darker. So what I'm gonna do instead is just add kind of a graduated filter with some plus whites, plus exposure over just one part of the sky like this, and I might have to mix it with a little bit of minus clarity, or not minus exposure, not quite as much exposure is what I meant to say, and just make this spot overall a bit brighter. So that seems to work actually pretty well. And then I'm gonna right click and duplicate that one filter and go over this part of the sky as well and make this rather bright. Now the reason I'm doing that is so, well, first of all, it adds complexity within the sky, of course, but it also kind of creates a path from the lake in the foreground, which you probably, you know, look at first of all. then going to the bright mountain, then the mountain and the whole line leading you towards the left of the picture, and just kind of using these bright spots to continue the line and to additionally help with the viewer's attention going through the entire photo. So I think that's pretty good. Let's add another plus exposure and plus white filter just here, you know, a very small part of this mountain green right there, because I do want that to stick out even more. And with that being said, let's actually add another minus exposure adjustment filter, and this is again just so there's kind of a more distinct differentiation from the right part and the left part of the mountain. And yeah, I think that works pretty well here. So with that being said though, I really think I'm actually done with this picture. If you guys have any suggestions, then just let me know. I'd be more than happy to try anything out here. But other than that, I think I would slowly, just end the live stream and edit another picture another day. So even Gearing says the lights and darks seem a bit blocky. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but the reason you think that is because you see it relatively small right now. If you zoom in already, then it becomes kind of more evened out, and you don't think, for example, this area right here looks a little bit, you know, crazy dark if you zoom out, but if you zoom in for like a big print or a big monitor or whatever, then it starts to kind of equivalate out, even though, yeah, you might actually be right about this spot right here, because even zoomed in, even though it gets a little bit better, I do want to reset some of these, just a little bit less into the minus exposure, but I still prefer to have quite a lot of darks and bright parts all over the picture. You know, just the left part right here has so many dark parts, has some very bright parts as well, and just having all of that in the entire picture adds so much complexity, not only if you look at a picture, you know, for 5 seconds on Instagram, but also if you actually print your picture and look at it for a few minutes perhaps. Then Bonjiger says, why don't you just use the brush tool? Just joined, I don't know if you mentioned it before. Well, the reason why I prefer to use the rail filters for dodge and burning is actually because it is much faster. You know, I can just add a filter. I'm going to go into the crazy minus exposure so you see what I'm doing here. But I can just add a filter, then right click and duplicate, and drag the filter over another place, then adjust the exposure independently from there, then again right click duplicate over another place. So it's just much faster than always grabbing new adjustment brushes. And also, if you see that right here, this is like a crazy amount of minus exposure, but by having the feather at 100, you have a very, very soft edge, even with that crazy adjustment. So this is just not something you could get. I'm gonna show you right here, for example, if I would bring an adjustment brush of similar size into the picture with minus exposure, and I would still have the feather at 100, then you will see that it will not blend in the picture nearly as much as the rail filter does. It's just a much softer feather if you bring the rail filter feather all the way to minus 100. So I'm just gonna have to find it real quick to delete it. Then, I mean, I can appreciate the long videos, but YouTube algorithm definitely looks the watch time, and if a long... So, yeah, it's true. Long videos are much better for YouTube ranking, even though people might not watch as much percentage-wise of a video. Watch time is just more important than views nowadays with YouTube, especially with like, I mean, most of you probably don't care about this, but if you make a video below 10 minutes, you really have a much worse ranking from YouTube. It's weird, but that's how they do it, so unfortunately you kind of have to get along with it. And he says also, I think 20R that is, if you see that most thriving YouTubers are cutting their videos to 10 minutes in order to keep viewers' retention high so they can be ranked higher. Yeah, I believe like YouTube really likes 10-minute videos. It's just at the edge over 10 minutes. But I really, personally, if a video takes 15, 20, 30 minutes, then I'm not going to artificially make it, force it to be 10 minutes. But certainly, if you would play the YouTube game to get the maximum amount of views, you would probably be better off just making around 10-minute videos. Then, what else is there? What about spot removal tool of the little sheep to the left, says Eddie Street. Which sheep do you mean exactly? There are some sheep on the bottom here, very, very small, if you can even see them on the live stream. But, I don't mind them. Is there a sheep somewhere in the middle of something? I don't think there is. But if there is something that I don't see, then let me know. And David Steen says hi. Well, hi there as well. You've unfortunately just joined right now as I'm ending the live stream, but you can always kind of rewind here on the live stream, and you can also watch the VOD, the whole live stream that I've made afterwards on YouTube. I think it should be up like after processing and stuff, so you can just watch it there. And Bungiger says, I usually put your videos on 1.5 times speed, and that works for me. Well, I do that too. I watch most videos actually at 2x speed, especially if it's about learning stuff. Like Casey Neistat videos, I would never dare to do that. I want to enjoy every second of that. But yeah, if you have just a guy talking a video and not really something super interesting happening, like pretty much most of my videos, then I would certainly also watch them at 1.5 or 2 times speed, especially because even though I think I'm talking fast, I'm just kind of talking slow when I listen to my own video. I don't know, it's just how it is, I guess. But actually, when I edit my videos, I even watch myself the playback in 2.5 times speed. And David Steen says, could you please do an astrophotography tutorial? I really can't read. Yeah, that would actually be interesting. I made a video about editing star pictures, but I have never made a video about actually, going out and shoot. I probably should do that at some point. Yeah, that's a really good suggestion there. So that's pretty much all I see here in the chat. So yeah, in the next video live stream, I'm really not sure when or where, but I love these live streams because you don't have to prepare so much. You can just kind of record, not have to edit afterwards and render and all of that. So it's quite cool to do them from time to time. I'm sure I'm going to do them again. But yeah, I have got a lot more pictures. Like these are just a few of the thousands of pictures I took on Scotland on the trip a few days ago actually. And this is another one, kind of the same location. This is actually an unedited picture, also in the same location, but during crazy light at sunset. And then kind of the same thing. Now, where is something else? Yeah, this is actually the store, it's called STORR. This is on the Isle of Skye, the same, same area where this stuff is as well. And I've got some pictures from that as well. I really just selected a few real quick. But I think this one is pretty cool, maybe with or without the car, perhaps even black and white for the next edit. But I'll see. There's certainly also, what else do I have? Kind of an extremely dark bridge with some other sheep going on the bridge. I think with some right editing that could be pretty cool as well. And this is poetry at night, also kind of a maybe interesting picture to edit. Then a lake just during sunset, somewhere up in the Scottish Highlands. another picture of the lake, another random landscape, also in the Scottish Highlands, and then I have kind of a boring picture if you really ask me. But yeah, I'm certainly very excited to do a next live stream. I think this went really well, if you ask me. I certainly enjoyed it. Like, you can always either like or dislike the video, the live stream, whatever. It helps me out. It helps me to see if you actually enjoyed the video, the live stream, or not. So yeah, just let me know that way. And what else is there? Yeah, the chat seems pretty much empty by now. No new questions. Just David, you ask again, where are you from? I'm actually from Switzerland. I'm currently traveling, or I was traveling in Scotland. I am now in Switzerland to do some things, but I'm actually going back to Scotland very soon. So yeah, I'm just kind of traveling as much as I can, I guess. So, if I missed any of your questions, any of your chat messages, I apologize. But I'm certainly gonna hopefully get better at that whole procedure once I do that a little bit more. But yeah, I think this, just making sure that the chat didn't freeze on my phone. Nope, it seems that it's actually fine, and still 46 people watching me during this outro here. That's quite amazing. Thank you very much for watching. Like, I believe the stream got like 90 views at some point, which might not seem like a lot compared to what videos get, but actually 90 people live watching something, that's quite crazy. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, other than that, I think I'm gonna sign out here. Again, thank you very much. I do appreciate you watching, and see you in the next live stream or video, I hope. I think I'm actually gonna post this picture this week somewhere on 500px or Instagram. Yeah, it's pretty cool if you ask me. Anyways, take care, guys. I'll be back someday. So how do I stop this now? Oh yeah, there it is.